Hello, David and friends, colleagues. Sorry I can't be there. I've got a data event up in Edinburgh, but we've all got data events these days, it seems. My name's Chris Speed. I'm a professor of design informatics at the University of Edinburgh, and as you can tell by the title, I'm a designer. So I tend to move through problems with my hands, with thinking, often with code now, and using data as a material. So, three biggest issues for health in the year 2040. One, asking for help. The British don't ask for help. And the year 2040 came that we really didn't know anymore how to ask for help. You guys don't ask for help, actually. You're very good at offering help, but we found through a number of studies that we're involved in that there's an imbalance in the models of reciprocity, which has probably been brought about by capitalism, to be honest. But anyway, it's had a huge impact on concept of health. How to address this? Well, there's three ways. One, study reciprocity, particularly as we develop a data-based culture. How do we balance the books through concepts of reciprocity, where we foster the need to ask for help that then returns a model of help? And how do we get away from an institutionalized model? So study reciprocity. Two, study value and trust. You'll probably share and probably begin to ask for help if you trust people. So how do we develop that, and what is the appropriate amount of value that is returned, and how do we feel commensurate that the things that we've put in are returned? And then lastly, we also think that objects around us are going to be part of that. It might be that we can't ask for help, but it might be that we ask objects to do that for us. So we're curious as product designers about how we do care about the things around us that might ask for help for us. Sounds a bit odd, but how can objects help us ask for help? Okay, that's one. Currencies. By 2040, we will be using data as our primary currency. Bitcoins are already an interesting rehearsal because they expose some of the transparency in system. Most of the money in your pockets, you don't know where it's come from. Most Bitcoins, you do know where they've come from. And people by 2040 do want an accountable system for their money. Therefore, they want utter transparency. So they'll just turn to data. They'll find huge transactions. So one, how do we find evidence to build and address these issues? One, study models in which data is exchanged as value. So what are the early models we've got for that? And these can be stories, babysitting circles. We might find it in very things we do now. But how do we begin to understand those type of economies? Two, study how trading with currencies that do expose value chains can affect people's sense of value. And we know the government are starting to expose this is how your money's been spent. But actually, what about my actual money and how much am I worth? If data can allow that to happen, then let's set some pilot studies running where we really begin to expose where the value goes. And then, perhaps looking at the early question, begin to understand how it's commensurate with people's worth and their need for help. And lastly, under that bracket, how would we begin to trade and build a currency appropriate for the health service? And I don't know, but what might you trade? Would you trade old pills? Would you trade knowledge? What type of currency do we need to run through healthcare? Maybe it's care, but how does everybody have a value or a stake in that currency when at the moment we tend to defer to experts? And the last one is data ownership. Data probably can't be owned in the old sense of the word. You can't just stuff data into the cloud and expect it to be there in the same model as though it was just cash. It just doesn't work like that. And it's always between people. Very rarely do we make data on our own. It's often between people. So if data ownership is already a barrier, and in 2040, hopefully we've resolved the fact that I'm off to my dentists, but they don't talk to my doctors, who then don't talk to my insurers. And actually, we may well benefit from a link up, a constellation that connects all of these things. So how do we study concepts of data ownership? So study what data ownership means to people in order to ideate out new markets for trading data. Two, study what an internet of pills might be like. We have this particular interest that pills like this, which are just hay fever pills, are actually white objects, and without their information, they're quite meaningless objects. So it'll be quite interesting to understand when the object in health is physical or if it's actually data. And I think there's a whole lot of design opportunities personally within what we understand to be pills which are outside in material and then the data that is inside. And then lastly, study how communities might respond to healthcare if they could broker data between themselves. What happens if you could share data in a family, in a community, and how neighbours might begin to broker that data to help constitute some models of reciprocity and other issues. So asking for help, new currencies, and then data ownership. Have a good day. Bye.